Hey everyone, welcome back to How to Be a Poser. Today, we must face the long dark of Moria with the Gandalf the Grey 6-scale figure by Asmus Toys. He's no conjurer of cheap tricks, this one. Let's get started. All right, here it is, the Gandalf the Grey 6-scale figure by Asmus, and look at how glorious it is. It comes with this amazing environmental base that we're going to put to full use, count on it. The head comes separately so that we can take care of this beard. That's going to work out really well. We've got Glamdring, two different versions of his staff, cloak, hands, everything you need to pretty much recreate anything from the Lord of the Rings films. Can't wait to see what we can do with all this stuff, so let's get rolling. All right, let's work some magic with Gandalf. For this first pose, I'm gonna go with something from the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, which is my favorite scene with Gandalf the Grey in the Peter Jackson directed film, The Fellowship of the Ring. I wanna get something going on when he's wielding both the sword and the staff in combat. Now, for our purposes for this pose, we're going to use the staff with the crystal in it. The other staff that has the pipe in it, it's my understanding that that is meant to be the one from The Hobbit. We're also going to need this satchel. That's going to have to go on him. We won't need the hat. That can stay over here, as well as the cloak and all of the hands, because I am going to use the hands that came attached to the figure. And for the staff, I kind of like the tighter grip on this hand because when he's wielding that staff, he's not going to be messing around. He's going to have that thing gripped tightly. Can't have the Balrog knocking the staff out of your hand. That's like in chapter 1 of the Wizard's Handbook. First and foremost, I want to go ahead and pop Gandalf's head off. And since the hair won't be draped across his shoulders at this point, that means that I can actually apply the satchel to him without getting any hair trapped underneath the strap of the satchel. Now, I don't have any with me right now, but when it comes to cloth elements like this, bags and whatnot, when they're resting, they kind of have a tendency to hang, but they don't look like they have any weight to them. So typically what I do is I just take a few coins and I throw them in there, and that usually provides enough weight just to create the tension in the strap to provide that added element of realism. The next dressing element that I want to perform is with the scabbard. I'm going to leave Glamdring in it for this. Now, this is a really interesting process because there are two leather straps with loops through them. This one here you can see one comes out the top, the other comes out the bottom, and there's this guy right here that presents a third one. So this is a really complex and interesting way of engineering this that's really attractive at the same time. What you're going to do is you're going to fold this top loop down just like that, insert the tip of the scabbard through that, bring up this longer strap, slide that loop on, and then the final loop will be the bottom loop from the two looped strap towards the back. Just kind of gradually slide all three of those loops down, and then once you get the top loop all the way down, then you can just adjust these however you see fit. I kind of like to have Gandalf's scabbard hanging back a little bit more. I think that's closer to the way he wears it in the films. Now, the reason that I didn't put his head back on is because I want to adjust his eyes. Now, when they come to you, he's looking pretty much straight ahead, just as he is here. When he's battling the Balrog, there is something about Ian McKellen's performance in this where he highlighted a bit of doubt and uncertainty on his face when he was confronting the Balrog. He never looked at him straight on. He always had his head down and was looking at him from beneath his mighty eyebrows. So we're going to try to affect that just to get as close to the real thing as possible. It requires very little movement of these pegs inside of the head to get the eyes to correspond. He's looking at something that's very tall. If he was looking at something close up, then he would probably not be focusing so far away. But just keep that in mind when you're considering the placement of the eyes. I'm going to just move this around here. I'm going to really gently put this back on his head so as not to bump those things. Next, let's go ahead and outfit him with his weapons. Gandalf wields Glamdring in his right hand and his staff in his left. Primary weapon being the sword, that's the one that inflicts the damage. The staff is a defensive weapon in more ways than one. So let's go ahead and get this sword into his hand. Bring that hand all the way up to the bottom of the hilt. Now, as we've discussed before in other videos, if you've watched more than just this one episode, of how to be a poser. There is a rule with the edge of the blade that it must line up perfectly with the second knuckles, those top knuckles in the fist that I have going around here. So once you've done that, then the job of that hand is done. You can lower that for the time being. Let's go ahead and bring this hand up, because this is actually the hand that's going to be raised over his head. Now, when I get this in here, I'm going to show you what I'm not going to do. You'll be tempted to bring the sword over his head and the staff over his head, straight armed, make your adjustments to the hand, bring them together, and then have Gandalf looking out from beneath the sleeves of his robe in order to just get the whole "you shall not pass." While it looked cool and the motion seems natural, it just doesn't quite read very well. Before the part where Gandalf says, "You shall not pass," where he's got his sword drawn back like this, and he's first facing down the Balrog, and you can see it. You can see that he's raising this thing over his head, and you can watch that light on that staff just begin to gleam. The gem becomes this source of a globe of pure white light that casts itself around Gandalf. It's a shielding spell that protects him from the downward stroke of the Balrog. But it's a very dynamic pose. It's beautiful. It looks like a painting when he's doing it. And it's a bit more dynamic insofar as the spread of how far apart the feet are than I'm typically willing to do. But for this case, I think it works. We're going to take that torso and we're going to twist the hell out of it. Just as far as you can comfortably twist it, then we're also going to lean it back a little bit. Then take that head to compensate, okay? And then we're going to need to make some adjustments to this already raised arm here, because I want that over his head. Get that blade back and not touching the ground. So we'll need to rotate his hand just a touch. And we're going to tilt his head up so that he's obviously looking at something very, very large. One of the difficulties that comes from working with road figures, I've mentioned this with Jawas, I've mentioned it with other road figures, is that you don't get to get a good read on where your figure's legs are, and that can make it a little bit more challenging, but it still can be done. I think we're pulling it off okay here today. And by doing this, you can feasibly have this figure displayed on a lower shelf looking up, but it will look equally impressive from below. I think we've got something pretty special here. Your dark fire shall not avail you, flame of Udun. Oop, you fell. Oh, I see what happened. Yeah, I've got this foot rotated a little bit too far out this way. If you rotate the toe back inwards a little bit, provides a bit more stability, and you're done. I think we got a great pose there. That's so dynamic. That is so Gandalf. That is everything. There's an ongoing debate you can have, whether it's at parties or D&D games, where you can just decide which one is your favorite Gandalf. Gandalf the Grey or Gandalf the White. For myself, it's Gandalf the Grey. This is my Gandalf. He's the one who's the most accessible. He's more human. You could argue that he has less power than he does as Gandalf the White, and you'd probably be correct. The fact of the matter is that this is the Gandalf that I want to invite to my 111th birthday party. Great figure, and you can do quite a bit with it.
Did you enjoy that video? Be sure to subscribe by hitting the S icon on your screen and click the bell icon to be notified whenever a new video is posted. If you'd like more info on the items featured in this video, click the link provided under product info. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to let your geek side show.